Welcome to StoriesX. What happens when a self-righteous Karen tries to steal a wheelchair just because her son is tired and turns a routine flight into a chaotic showdown? Get ready for a wild ride of entitlement clashing with cold, hard truth. Don't miss out on more jaw-dropping tales. Hit that subscribe button and ring the bell for notifications. It was a chilly morning at the airport, a time when every traveler hoped for a smooth, uneventful journey. I had arrived early, my injured foot forcing me to rely on a wheelchair. With my boots still on and my trusted carrier by my side, I was ready to navigate the terminal and catch my flight. I'd flown countless times with my disability, and until recently, everything had gone by without incident. But fate had other plans. I parked my wheelchair near Gate D and settled in, my cat snug in his carrier beside me. I was scrolling through my phone when a commotion erupted near the gate area. I looked up just in time to see a woman, unmistakably exuding entitlement, storming through the crowd. Her eyes were fixed on me. It wasn't long before she made her way over, her little son in tow, a tired child whose sleepy eyes contrasted sharply with his mother's fierce determination. "Excuse me," she snapped, her voice carrying across the crowded terminal. "I need that wheelchair for my son right now." I was taken aback. "Ma'am, I'm sorry, but I'm using this wheelchair. It's part of my travel accommodations," I explained calmly, though my heart was pounding. She scoffed, narrowing her eyes. "What do you mean, using it? My son is exhausted and needs a place to sit. I'm his mother. If he's tired, he deserves to rest." Her tone was sharp, laced with the kind of arrogance that could only belong to someone who believed the world owed them a favor. I tried to keep my cool. "I have all the necessary documentation. This wheelchair was provided because of my injury," I said, gesturing toward the papers in my bag. "It's not something I can just hand over." Her expression contorted with fury. "Documentation? That's just an excuse. I don't care about your paperwork." She leaned in closer, her voice low and threatening. "You need to get out of the chair. Now? My son needs to rest." A few onlookers began to watch, smartphones already recording the heated exchange. The tension in the air was palpable. A nearby security guard stepped forward, his eyes scanning the situation. "Ma'am, please calm down," he urged, his tone firm yet polite. "Let's resolve this without further incident." But Karen wasn't listening. "Calm down? I'm not the one causing trouble here," she shot back. "I'm trying to take care of my child, and you're in the way. I demand you move so he can sit in your wheelchair." I shook my head, feeling both frustrated and determined. "I'm not asking for your permission," I replied, my voice steady. "I need this wheelchair for my own mobility. It's not a luxury, it's a necessity." Her son whimpered at the commotion, and for a split second, I felt a pang of sympathy for the tired kid caught in the middle of his mother's outburst. Yet, Karen's aggressive insistence left me no choice. "I'm not moving," I said firmly. "This wheelchair is my right." Karen's face flushed red as she glared at me, and I could see that her fury was only growing. "You're being heartless," she screamed, startling several nearby passengers. "How dare you refuse a mother's request? I'm not finished here. I'll make sure everyone knows how you treat people in need." Just then, a flight attendant hurried over, tried to assess the situation. "Ma'am, please," she said, "let's resolve this calmly. Your son is welcome to use one of the seats in the terminal if you'd like." Karen snapped. "Don't patronize me. I'm asking for something very simple, a wheelchair for my tired son." Her voice broke slightly as she continued. "He's been running around all day, and I won't let him suffer while you hog this equipment." The flight attendant exchanged a glance with the security guard before addressing me. "Sir, are you sure you can't accommodate her request? We want to avoid further disturbance." I took a deep breath and replied, "I understand a concern, but this isn't negotiable. I rely on this wheelchair every day. I have no intention of giving it up." At that moment, Karen's son reached out hesitantly, his small hand grasping for something, anything, to make his mother smile. The sight seemed to momentarily soften her hardened expression, but only for a second. "No, I need that wheelchair, and you will give it to me?" she roared again, before lunging forward. In the ensuing chaos, The flight attendant's firm voice rang out. "Ma'am, this behavior is unacceptable. I'm sorry, but you and your child will not be allowed on this flight if you continue." The words, crisp and decisive, marked the turning point. Karen's anger faltered, and the reality of the situation began to sink in. As security gently guided her and her son away, I was left reeling, hurt, frustrated, and a little defiant. In that moment, I realized that standing up for my rights wasn't just about me. It was a stand against the unchecked entitlement that could hurt others. I put my headphones back on, the turmoil around me slowly fading into the background of the busy terminal. And so began the unexpected battle over a wheelchair, a battle that would soon leave everyone wondering, when entitlement meets necessity, who really gets to decide? The chaos that erupted at Gate D left the terminal in a state of stunned silence for a few long seconds. In the aftermath of that heated confrontation, I found myself surrounded by a mixture of sympathetic glances and curious stares from fellow passengers. The flight attendant's crisp order still echoed in my ears as security began to close in on Karen and her son. My heart pounded with adrenaline, and I could feel every eye tracking the unfolding drama. I sat back in my wheelchair, clutching my bag tightly and keeping my gaze fixed on the scene. Just moments earlier, Karen had been raging, her demands echoing off the walls. Now, security officers, clad in dark uniforms and armed with calm authority, were gently escorting her away from the gate. Her furious shouts had subsided into mumbled protests, punctuated by her son's soft, disheartened cries. "Sir, are you all right?" a kind voice asked behind me. I turned to see an older gentleman in a crisp jacket, concern etched on his face. "I've never seen anything like that. I'm sorry you had to go through it." I managed a small nod, replying, "I'm fine. Thank you. I need to get to my flight without any more drama." The gentleman patted my shoulder reassuringly, and I couldn't help but feel a sense of solidarity among strangers who recognized the absurdity of the situation. Nearby, the flight attendant approached me again. "I apologize for the disturbance," she said, her tone measured and sincere. "We take these matters very seriously, and I assure you we're doing everything we can to prevent further issues." Her eyes, gentle and professional, conveyed both empathy and a firm resolve to maintain order. "If you need any assistance or a quiet spot to wait, please let me know." I nodded, grateful for intervention, though the shock of the encounter still pulsed through my veins. As I resumed scrolling on my phone, trying to distract myself, I couldn't help but replay every moment in my head. Karen's defiant tone, the pleading look in her son's eyes, the firm yet compassionate response from the flight attendant. It was a battle of wills, where entitlement collided with the stark reality of necessity. A few minutes later, as the terminal's noise slowly resumed its regular rhythm, I found myself approached by another passenger, a woman with a calm demeanor and an aura of quiet strength. "I just wanted to say," she began, "that I'm really sorry you had to experience that. It's not every day you see someone standing up so boldly for their rights." Her voice was soft, yet carried a genuine warmth that made me feel understood. I've been in similar situations before, and it's exhausting when entitled behavior disrupts everyone's peace. "Thank you," I replied, managing a tired smile. "It's been a rough start to the day, but I'm just trying to hold on to my dignity, you know?" She nodded, her eyes reflecting a mix of empathy and quiet admiration. "Absolutely. No one should be forced to sacrifice their dignity for the sake of someone else's arrogance." As I continued to wait, the incident began to take on a life of its own. Some passengers whispered about the spectacle, while others recorded snippets of the confrontation on their phones, their faces a blend of disbelief and amusement. Social media buzzed with the unfolding event, and I could tell that within minutes, the story was spreading far beyond the confines of Gate D. The flight attendant returned with an update that cut through the murmurs. "Security has now escorted the passenger out, and we're ensuring that no further disturbances occur," she announced over a portable PA system. The clarity of her voice, combined with the firm tone of the security guard by my side, reassured everyone that order would be restored. In the midst of all this, I couldn't help but feel a growing sense of vindication. Not for the sake of confrontation, but because my right to the accommodations I desperately needed had been defended. Yet, there was also an undeniable twinge of sadness. The sight of Karen's son, tears streaming down his face as he clung to his mother, reminded me that entitlement often breeds pain not only for those who insist on having their way, but for innocent bystanders caught in the crossfire. "Do you think she'll ever learn?" the older gentleman asked as he resumed his seat nearby. I paused, considering his question. "I hope so," I said slowly, "but some people never change. They're so consumed by their own sense of entitlement that they can't see the harm they cause." My voice carried a mix of resignation and resolve. At least today, we stood our ground. And maybe that will encourage others to stand up for themselves too. As the final boarding call for my flight rang out, the terminal began to quiet again, the earlier uproar now reduced to a lingering memory. I took a deep breath, steadying myself for what was next. The incident was a stark reminder that sometimes defending one's rights can lead to unexpected battles, a battle that isn't just about a wheelchair, but about preserving dignity in the face of unchecked entitlement. And so, with a renewed determination and the support of strangers turned allies, I prepared to board my flight, knowing that the lessons of the day would resonate far beyond the confines of that terminal. The fallout from the confrontation was just beginning, and I couldn't shake the feeling that this was only the start of a larger conversation about respect, empathy, and the true meaning of personal accountability. In the wake of the confrontation, the terminal settled into an uneasy calm that belied the emotional storm that had just passed. As I sat quietly in my wheelchair, still reeling from the barrage of angry words and raised voices, I couldn't help but notice the whispers and furtive glances from fellow passengers. It was as though everyone was silently weighing the cost of standing up against unchecked entitlement. I found myself reflecting on the events that had unfolded, how a simple request turned into a public spectacle, and how one person's desperate demand had disrupted the peace of an entire terminal. The flight attendant's firm intervention had restored order, but it hadn't erased the raw tension that now seemed to hover over the space. Every face around me told a story of shock, sympathy, or even quiet approval. "Hey, are you doing okay?" The soft voice of a middle-aged woman, sitting beside me in the waiting area, broke through my reverie. Her eyes, full of genuine concern, met mine. I saw what happened. Not many would have the guts to stand up for themselves like you did. I managed a small, grateful smile. "Thank you," I replied, my voice still catching a bit. It wasn't about being confrontational. It was just about not letting someone take advantage of me. I paused, considering her words. Sometimes you have to defend your rights, no matter how messy it gets. As we talked, a cluster of younger travelers gathered near the boarding gate. They exchanged knowing glances and whispered among themselves, their faces lit up by the glow of their smartphones. It was clear that the incident had gone viral within minutes, and a few had even started sharing their thoughts on social media. One of them, a young man with an infectious grin, chimed in, "That was epic. Not many people would stand up to a Karen like that. Kudos to you." His tone was teasing yet supportive, and it made me feel a strange sense of camaraderie with strangers who'd witnessed the moment. The flight attendant returned once more, this time with a reassuring nod and a few kind words to calm lingering nerves. "We're sorry you had to go through that," she said, her voice gentle. "We'll make sure you're comfortable for the rest of your wait." Her empathy was palpable, and it helped ease the sting of the ordeal. I spent the next few minutes quietly reflecting on the incident. Was I being too stubborn, too unyielding? The question echoed in my mind as I reread the texts and comments that had already started flowing in on my phone. Some labeled me a hero, while a few called me a jerk for refusing to yield. I knew my rights, and I knew that what I was doing wasn't about being belligerent. It was about maintaining my dignity in the face of arrogance. "Look," I said to the middle-aged woman who'd comforted me earlier, "I don't regret standing up for myself. I rely on that wheelchair, and it's not something I can just hand over because someone else wants it. My injury isn't a debate topic. It's my reality." She nodded in understanding. "Absolutely. An entitlement like that, when someone assumes they're above others, only causes harm. It's a lesson for everyone. You stood your ground, and that's something to be proud of." Across the terminal, the energy was slowly shifting. Conversations began to resume their normal rhythm as passengers returned to their routines. However, I could still sense that this incident would linger in our memories. Some people had been reminded of the importance of compassion, while others saw it as a cautionary tale about the dangers of unchecked arrogance. Before long, my boarding call echoed to the terminal, snapping me back to the reality of travel. I gathered my belongings, carefully positioning my cat carrier next to me. As I wheeled myself toward the gate, I felt a strange mix of relief and resolve. I knew that standing up for myself had set a precedent, not just for me, but for anyone who might one day face similar challenges. While I was anxious about the upcoming flight, I couldn't help but feel a spark of hope. In that brief, chaotic episode, I had witnessed a small victory for dignity over entitlement. And as I passed by the curious stares and encouraging nods of fellow passengers, I realized that sometimes the cost of standing up is outweighed by the power of truth. Boarding the plane that day, I carried with me the memory of the conflict, a reminder that respect isn't just given, it must be earned. And for anyone wondering if it makes you a jerk to refuse to let abuse slide, I'd say that sometimes holding on to your rights is the only way to ensure you're treated with the dignity you deserve. As the plane ascended into the quiet skies, a tense calm settled over the cabin. I found my seat in the aisle, my wheelchair now safely stowed in a secure area near the door, and my cat carrier resting by my feet. The incident at Gate D had left an indelible mark on me. Every harsh word, every glare, and every whispered comment from fellow passengers replayed in my mind. I took a deep breath, trying to regain a semblance of peace amidst the lingering chaos. Before long, the flight attendant, Lisa, a kind-eyed woman with a reassuring smile, returned my row. "Sir, I just want to check in on you," she said softly, crouching down so her tone wouldn't carry to nearby passengers. "How are you holding up after that ordeal at the gate?" I managed a small smile, appreciating her concern. "I'm doing all right, thank you. It's been a rough start, but I'm just glad the situation didn't escalate further. I just want to enjoy the flight in peace." Lisa nodded sympathetically. "We're all really sorry you had to go through that. I've been hearing bits and pieces from other passengers, and I know it wasn't easy. If you need anything, a quiet spot, extra assistance, or just someone to talk to, please let me know." Her words, delivered with genuine care, helped to ease the tension I'd been carrying. As I settled in and tried to refocus on a book on my phone, I couldn't shake the sense of injustice that still burned within me. The notion that someone could so callously trample on another's right to basic dignity was a bitter pill to swallow. During the in-flight meal service, a nearby passenger, a gentleman in his 50s, struck up a quiet conversation. "I saw what happened at the gate," he said, his voice low so as not to disturb others. "Not many would stand up like you did. You got some real backbone, son." I gave him a nod of gratitude. "Thank you. It wasn't about wanting a fight. It was about not letting someone steal something I depend on. We all have our battles, and today mine was for my basic right to mobility." The man shook his head. "Entitlement can really mess things up. I've seen it time and again. I hope this serves as a lesson for everyone, really." Meanwhile, whispers about the incident spread among the passengers, and a few people approached me with supportive words. A young woman with vibrant blue hair said, "You know, your courage today reminds me that sometimes standing up for yourself is the only way to set things right." Her encouragement made me feel less isolated, as if a small community of fellow travelers was affirming that my stance was not only justified but necessary. At one point, Lisa returned with an update. "Sir, the airline has taken note of what happened. They're offering you a voucher as compensation for the disturbance today," she informed me, her tone professional yet warm. "I hope it helps a bit." I couldn't help but smile at that. That's very kind of them. It's a small gesture, but after today, it means a lot. As the flight continued, I found moments of quiet reflection. I reviewed the incident on my phone, watching the clips that had been recorded by fellow passengers. Each clip captured fragments of the chaos. Karen's vehement shouts, the security's firm intervention, and the flight attendant's steadying presence. It was surreal to see my own calm composure juxtaposed with the pandemonium that had ensued. In between the announcements over the intercom and the gentle hum of the engines, I couldn't help but think about the broader implications. When entitlement goes unchecked, I muse silently. It disrupts lives. But standing up for yourself isn't about being a jerk. It's about asserting your right to be treated with respect. The conversation with Lisa later in the flight deepened this thought. You know, she confided quietly, we deal with so many difficult situations, but it's always the ones where someone refuses to back down that truly inspire me. You showed incredible strength today. Her words, spoken softly as she passed by, resonated with me long after she moved on. By the time we began our descent, the earlier storm of emotions had gradually given way to a reflective calm. I knew that the repercussions of today's battle would ripple through social media and word of mouth, perhaps even prompting others to reconsider their own actions in moments of entitlement. As the plane touched down and we prepared to disembark, I felt a cautious optimism. I had stood up for myself, and in doing so, I had defended a universal right. It wasn't just about a wheelchair or a flight. It was about the fundamental dignity that every traveler deserves. With my head held high and a renewed sense of purpose, I rolled off the plane, ready to face whatever came next, knowing that sometimes the courage to say no is the first step toward meaningful change. The plane's wheels kissed the tarmac with a soft thud, and as we began our descent, a hush seemed to fall over the cabin. A collective exhale after the storm of emotions. With the final announcement ringing through the cabin, I gathered my belongings and prepared to disembark. The tumult of the past few hours, the confrontation, the standoff, and the raw display of entitlement, had settled into a reflective calm. As I navigated the narrow aisle, I couldn't help but feel a sense of quiet triumph. I had stood up for my rights, not out of anger but in defense of my dignity. Outside, the terminal was abuzz with activity. Yet, there was an unmistakable air of solidarity among the passengers who had witnessed the drama unfold. Strangers exchanged nods and gentle smiles, a silent acknowledgement that sometimes the courage to say no sends ripples far beyond a single moment. I rolled slowly toward baggage claim, my heart still echoing with the events of the day, and found myself surrounded by a medley of emotions, relief, resolve, and the quiet pride of having defended something fundamental. A middle-aged traveler, leaning casually against a pillar, caught my eye and said, "I saw what happened at Gate D. You really showed them what standing up for yourself is all about." His words, delivered in a warm, encouraging tone, reaffirmed that my actions had resonated with more than just me. In that instant, I realized that when we defend our right to be treated with dignity, we not only uplift ourselves, but also inspire others to do the same. At the exit, as I loaded my bag into the taxi, I reflected on how a single incident can serve as a catalyst for broader change. The chaos at the gate had been a painful reminder of the everyday challenges faced by those with disabilities. It had exposed the harsh reality of unchecked entitlement and the impact it can have on innocent bystanders. Yet, amid the turmoil, there was a lesson to be learned, a call to action for all who witnessed it. Later that evening, back in the quiet of my apartment, I sat down at my desk to pen my thoughts. I replayed every moment. The defiant shout of, "I need that wheelchair for my son," from Karen, my steady response asserting my rights, the intervention of the flight attendant and security, and the supportive words of fellow passengers. It all coalesced into a powerful narrative of resistance, resilience, and the uncompromising pursuit of dignity. I began to type out my story, determined to share what had happened and what it meant to stand up against entitlement. In that reflective silence, I realized that this incident was more than just a personal battle. It was a mirror reflecting a societal issue. When entitlement goes unchecked, it disrupts lives and undermines the very fabric of respect and empathy that binds us together. But when someone stands firm in the face of injustice, it sends a clear message. No one is above the rights of another. My experience wasn't just about a stolen wheelchair. It was about asserting that my worth, my health, and my dignity are not negotiable. Before I turned in for the night, I drafted a final message. A message for anyone who might feel powerless in the face of arrogant entitlement. It read, "In every struggle, no matter how small it may seem, standing up for your rights is a victory not just for you, but for all who dare to be vulnerable. Let this be a reminder. Respect is not given. It is earned through courage, dignity, and the unwavering belief that every person deserves to be treated with fairness. When entitlement clashes with truth, let your voice be the beacon that illuminates the path to justice. Stand tall, speak up, and never allow anyone to diminish your worth." That message, I hoped, would echo far beyond my personal story. A call to every traveler, every individual who has ever been sidelined or dismissed. In sharing my experience, I aim to foster a culture where empathy triumphs over arrogance, and where every person is reminded of the intrinsic value of respect. As I finally drifted to sleep that night, the images of the day faded into a quiet reassurance. I had faced a storm of entitlement and emerged not only unbroken but empowered. And in that newfound strength, I knew that the journey toward a more respectful, compassionate world had taken yet another important step.